Russia's invasion of Ukraine has put pressure and attention on the leader of the much smaller nation in this conflict, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, a novice politician only in his third year as president, now risking his life to lead a resistance that may prove Vladimir Putin underestimated him. The United States also did not expect this effective a resistance, we should note. They planned for much faster failure, which is why U.S. officials offered to help Zelensky flee before this expected invasion began. A perhaps understandable gesture that would have compromised Zelensky's current leadership of this resistance that we're now witnessing, as many citizens stay and fight right along with him. Zelensky famously quipped back to those offers of transit, quote, "I need ammunition, not a ride." And as the Western world unites against Russia, it is also rallying around this unlikely wartime leader with tributes and standing ovations from neighboring parliaments, as many experts and outsiders outright marvel at Zelensky's poise.
And Ukrainian President Zelensky making that impassioned plea to the U.S. today, calling for tougher measures against Putin.
Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky has emerged as a hero in his nation and around the world.
President Zelensky, who I agree is emerging as an enormous example in leadership,
Transformed from an American political footnote to the new face of freedom and defiance.
All that brings us to our special report for you right now. We're going to draw on archival video that's rarely seen in America and other reporting to show how Zelensky got here and his particular bond with the Ukrainian public. Zelensky showed courage and grit that has been rivaling really many leaders with decades more experience. This is a story that could be right out of a war novel or one of those movies with that plot line where one honest citizen proves to be a better leader than countless career politicians. Of course, this is reality, not some plot. People are getting killed right now, as you see, as we know. And yet this dramatic reality is also occurring in a very real way as an echo to the career that brought Zelensky the fame that he turned into his current job. You may have heard about this a little, but consider that before this war, Zelensky was mostly known as an affable actor, the relatable, regular, everyman comic, a path that he pursued with great success after getting a law degree. He never practiced that. Instead, he was in show business, going from punchlines to then the leading man in many Ukrainian rom-coms and other blockbuster movies. He even won Ukraine's version of Dancing with the Stars. He voiced Paddington Bear in Ukrainian. He was really kind of a Ukrainian Tom Hanks or Kevin Kline, which helped lead to his casting in the role that got him in the position that we all know him in right now. I mentioned that trope in fiction where the honest citizen, the good guy, is better than any politician. In America, we know it from movies like Dave, where Fluke lands an everyman Kevin Kline in the Oval Office, and his genuine qualities are able to kind of reboot the presidency. Or if you remember Head of State, where a regular dude played by Chris Rock runs for president and wins, a film that came out 5 years before Obama first won the White House. Now, I said Obama later won, right? Not Chris Rock, which would be a very different and quite real twist. Imagine if Chris Rock catapulted from that role to being our real president right now, because that's literally what happened for Zelensky. He was only previously known in his home country, like Chris Rock is here, as a funny actor. So as the whole world tries to make sense of this conflict, of Putin barreling into it and Zelensky just defiantly fighting back, and we all try to look and figure out what may come next, which could affect our lives a lot, well, it is worth understanding how, unlike most leaders across most history, this wartime leader, who evinces more poise and courage than so many, got here by playing president. So in this report, you're going to see exactly what so many Ukrainians saw. I'm about to show you this TV show where a Ukrainian history teacher goes off on a blunt rant about greed and corruption and political failures in that country and the region, which in the show went viral, leading to his political ascendance. Here is Zelensky playing that iconic role.
А почему наши политики каждый раз приходят к власти и совершают одни и те же ошибки? Да потому что они охуенные математики. Знают только, как отнимать, делить и приумножать свое. Вот и все.
Петрович, я сроду тебе таких слов не слышал. Че ты завелся?
Есть, понимаешь? Тебе в пизду, пи***цев выбираем меньше. И так 25 лет подряд. Ты знаешь, что интересно? В этот раз ничего не поменяется. Знаешь почему? Потому что ты, мой батя, я, мы снова выберем пи***ца. Это потому что, да, понятно. Конечно, он пи***ц, да, но лучше его, те-то хуже. Так кто видел этот видеошедевр? Историю жжет. Просто порвала интернет и стала абсолютно не оправдывая себя из своего поступка. Наверняка мне не нужно было так, в общем, поступать.
Не знаю, мій батя сказав, що ви красава. І якби ви йшли в президенти, то він би за вас голосував.
Да.
Ну і мой теж.
Мои батьки также наши.
Единственное, радует, что они согласны с этой правдой.
Those fictional students tell their fictional teacher, Zelensky, that their fictional parents agree with the core of what he said. And in the show, soon he's running for president, learning the ropes.
Пані та панове, президент України. Так, пошли фанфари. Василий Петрович.
Да.
Че сидим-то? Выходим из лимузина. Выходим. Так, стоим здесь.
Да.
Носочки ровно. Глаза закрыли, открыли. Так лучше. Пойдем. Идем, да. Здесь вас встречает командир почетного караула. Шановные паны президенты, бла-бла-бла. Жмете ему руку. Жмете. Отлично. Идем дальше.
That scene, like those earlier American movies I mentioned, is played more for laughs there, but it's also populist in reminding viewers that democracy can mean regular people rule, not just rich, connected elites who were already at home in those kind of fancy, powerful scenes that are different than how most people, the governed, live their lives. That theme continues on his first day in office.
Ну, мам.
Сыночка, постой, полминуточки, спокойно.
Хорошо.
Воротись-ка, сынку.
Физкуль, привет, гарант.
Доброе утро.
Света, это все, что ты можешь сказать брату в первый рабочий день.
Мы тебя выбрали, мы тебя, если что, и снимем.
Ну, это понятно. Мамуля, у меня нет времени. Где портфель?
Сейчас. Так, значит, это салатик, котлеточки и термос с борщиком. Потом принес то, что назад.
Мам, ну зачем это все? Я мог пообедать в центре.
В центре? Тут все дорого.
Хорошо. Это все.
Сейчас. Самое главное.
Булавка зачем?
Булавочка от оппозиции. У них там у всех недобрый взгляд, чтобы не сглазили.
Ты мне еще осиновый кол положила.
Васенька, кстати, не руби там с плеча, находи общий язык с людьми. Может, я с тобой пойду?
Мам, я педагог, я разберусь.
Да уж разберись, староковник скоро.
Солидарная зона!
Петя, иди скажи что-нибудь на дорожку сыну.
Не просри страну, сынок.
Есть. Батя, целую.
Yes, sir. Zelensky's character also confronts something familiar to anybody who knows would-be autocrats, a loser incumbent who won't leave. Now, this 2015 production is familiar because it's what autocrats try to do.
Ваш предшественник, он закрылся у себя в кабинете, никого не подпускает, или что он легитимный. Требует литр водки, блок сигарет и политическое убежище в Югославии.
Я бы перевыборы выбрали какого-то, Юрий.
Оставьте меня в покое! В страну, Юра!
Вызывайте спецназ.
Да не надо спецназ. Можно я попробую?
Пожалуйста.
The scenes can be goofy, but they tackle the larger theme, the populist belief that honesty and common sense can work, that politics and governing doesn't need to be all deception and deals. The new president then applies that in breaking the impasse with what you saw there, the sore loser.
Вы не волнуйтесь, Аркадий Григорьевич. Я удержу высоко поднятую вами планку. Ведь на самом деле успех любого предприятия, как говорится, стоит на 3 китах. Это трудолюбие, честность и справедливость.
Я теперь спокоен. История нашей школы в надежных руках. Позвольте пожать одну из них.
С удовольствием.
Я спокійний, Україна в надійних руках.
That's a little fan fiction imagining Ukrainian bipartisanship, but Then the fans wanted to make the fiction real. They rallied around the idea that the real Zelensky could then run on a similar promise. He jumped into the race, and he didn't pivot, as the operatives say. He really embraced a lot of what he was known for in that fiction. He named his new party after the show, calling it Servant of the People, and he emphasized that the script would become a real plan and that he was taking obligations seriously.
Це не фейк, і я дуже серйозно відношусь до нашої країни, до життя кожної людини.
Ukraine's politics have long been saddled by interference from oligarchs and foreign pressure. It was a popular uprising that ousted the nation's previous pro-Putin leader, and the show imagined a popular uprising that would have unity, dreaming up that maybe 2/3 of voters would back change.
Здрасте.
Василий Петрович Голобородько?
Да.
Доброе утро, господин президент.
Результатом 67% перемогу здобув кандидат Голобородько Василь Петрович.
Отож, сенсаційно і вперше в історії України главою держави стає простий вчитель із Києва. Василь
Candidates love big majorities. When it came to the real race, the ex-actor actually did even better than the character, winning 73%, arriving at his real inauguration on foot and saying he would focus on results, not glory, that he was not seeking fame through this job. A claim which is more credible when it comes from someone who was already so famous.
Щоб у ваших кабінетах не було моїх зображень. Не було, будь ласка, моїх портретів. Бо президент не ікона, не ідол. Президент – це не портрет. Повісьте туди фотографії своїх дітей. І перед кожним рішенням дивіться їм в очі.
The real president there hitting that same populist note. And his unusual path may speak to the apparent bond and credibility he has with his people right now, fighting for their lives, and to a certain grit and perspective that this man apparently brought to politics rather than forging his own priorities through a long career in politics. And there are certainly limits, too. What works for the leadership or inspiration here may not overcome a huge gap in fighting this larger military power on their border. And while Americans may be learning more about this conflict right now, it's long been the main concern in Ukraine foreign policy. At that same inaugural speech, listen to how Zelensky rebukes past Russian incursions. He did that, drawing a standing ovation, and listen to how he shows a clear sense that any shot at this nation's survival may soon require a fight.
Мене часто питали, а на що ви готові заради припинення вогню? Дивне питання. А на що готові ви, українці, заради життя близьких вам людей? Я точно не боюсь приймати складні рішення, готовий втратити свою посаду, щоб тільки настав мир.
Zelensky now leads this resistance, risking everything. We have a special guest on all of this when we're back in 1 minute.
I lost 26 pounds.
And I love the science behind.
Connect you with Angela Merkel.
Yes, you can connect.
Hello, my congratulations. We decided to take your country to the European Union.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, wow. Oh, you know, I'm so happy. Yes. Thank you very much.
That's the fictional Ukrainian President Zelensky, and now I'm joined by David Dodson, a film editor and director who is connected to him. Dodson edited the bulk of Zelensky's movies since 2008, including 8 First Dates, which won the Russian Oscar for Best Comedy in 2013. How about that? And Me, You, He, She, which was the last film Zelensky starred in that was publicly released before he actually assumed the real presidency. Thanks for joining us. What do you know of this man that informs how he's approaching this resistance? And did his unusual path better prepare him for it, do you think? Or is it just coincidence?
I don't think it's a coincidence at all. If you know him, then what you know is that he's effortlessly personable. He has this self-effacing warmth. He never tries to overwhelm you with ego. He's very genuine in what he does. He's the guy that you see. There's no guile about him. And he seems to just really enjoy what he's doing at the time that he's doing it. And that applies to whether we're making movies or, I assume, at least his sincerity when it came time to run for the presidency.
You know, this word leadership gets thrown around a lot, and there are different contexts. But throughout most of modern history, rhetoric, language, the ability to effectively convey your ideas, values, aspirations, or beliefs is a key part of it. He echoed Churchill, both thinking about hours of need against enemies that much of the world thought were evil enemies. Let's show a little bit of that comparison.
We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be.
We will defend our land, whatever the price is.
We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets.
We will fight in the forests, we will fight in the fields, in the streets, in the cities, in the hills.
Unlike some of the TV show there, we have the interpreter's voice, the translator for American ears, but what does it mean to people in Ukraine to hear him say it with his own words? How much of his mastery of, as you put it, earnest communication is this sort of intangible, unmeasurable part of what many are calling a heroic resistance against long odds right now?
Yeah, it's not surprising at all. And the reason it's not surprising is because there's a certain kind of almost Arthurian dynamic to it, in that you sort of think of it as being the king is the land and the land is the king. There's a symbiotic relationship there. Volodya is performing in this way because that is the essential heart of the Ukrainian people. I mean, that's the thing that people have to understand. It's not necessarily that he's leading in an extraordinary way, which he absolutely is. It's that he's a mirror to the character of the Ukrainian people themselves. So nobody should be surprised that he's doing what he's doing, in the same way that nobody should be surprised that the Ukrainian people are fighting as courageously as they are. That ability to communicate that ability to represent it to the world is the exact same way that he's able to connect with the people of Ukraine, because he is Ukrainian in his heart, and they just don't give up. And they have a very, very palpable, strong sense of identity and pride, and that's why ultimately I believe they will be victorious here.
Spoken by someone who worked so closely with the leader who is, when they talk about person of the year or what everyone's watching, for grim reasons, he is on everyone's mind right now, and I'm sure you care a lot about it, given your history with him, David. So I appreciate you joining us to talk a bit about it. David Dodson.
Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Over 2 million, meanwhile, fleeing this war zone. We have